Under the merciless sun of Levant, a conflict of epic proportions is playing out. Two brave men from distant lands are standing face to face, their armies behind them. This is in the midst of dust and the ruins of a besieged city. One side is Balian, the knight from France, and facing him is Salahuddin Ayyubi, the renowned Muslim commander. Balian has valiantly defended the city, and he threatens Salahuddin Ayyubi and his army that he will burn down the city, denying the Muslims the prize that they are seeking. Salahuddin Ayyubi, ever the calm commander, makes an offer to Balian. His reputation of chivalry always precedes him. He says the Muslims will offer safe passage and honor to the Christian defenders if they surrender the city peacefully. Balian is startled at this offer and at the same time relieved. In an unguarded moment, his curiosity gets the better of him. Balian asks Salahuddin, "What is Jerusalem worth?" Salahuddin replies, "Nothing," and then turns around to leave in the scorching heat of that afternoon. Then, as if summoned by some higher power, he turns around and with conviction in his eyes, he resoundingly says, "Everything." This conversation between Balian and Salahuddin distills the fight for the holy city of Jerusalem, for which men were driven crazy to achieve their goal of getting the hold over that city. This fight over the centuries has been for the soul of that city. The sacredness, the holiness, the emotions, the faith, belief that is associated with that city. This is a scene from the well-made Hollywood movie Kingdom of Heaven. The dialogue of Salahuddin Ayyubi of just two words, "nothing" and "everything," in many ways captures the essence of this conflict over the holy city of Jerusalem. Jerusalem, also known as Jersualem in Hebrew language and Al-Quds in Arabic, is a city that is both an enigma and an irony. An enigma because from the objective lens of a historian, the city as such is not strategically located. It is not on any prominent trade route, nor does it boast of any significant economic resource. Yet, its importance in human history has only increased over the centuries. It's also an irony because, on one hand, as a center of the Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, it is associated with holiness and spirituality. Yet, it also has a history of bigotry, bloodshed, and fanaticism. There is something about the city that kindles zeal in men to possess it. It is no wonder then that crusaders from Europe came from several thousand kilometers away to repossess what they saw as their holy lands. Even in our contemporary times, the destiny of Jerusalem is intertwined with many conflicts. May it be the Israel-Palestine conflict, Iran and USA conflict, the debate between the seculars and the fundamentalists, Jerusalem finds itself connected one way or the other with many of these. But what is it in Jerusalem that drives people to madness to possess it? In fact, there is a condition in psychiatry called as the Jerusalem syndrome. Even today, the tourists who visit Jerusalem and travel through its honeycomb-like alleyways in the old city tend to develop obsessive religious thoughts. Many even start to show behavior like historical religious figures like Jesus, Mary, King David, so on and so forth. And these conditions are abated only after removing that tourist from that environment. Well, that is about the psychosis that tourists observe. But historically, yes, the city has definitely led to a lot of madness to possess it. Why is that so? The answer to this question is on a 35-acre plot in the heart of the old city in East Jerusalem. On this plot, the irony and enigma of Jerusalem unfolds. Let us try to understand what is hidden in this 35-acre plot. If you ask what is this 35-acre plot called, then the answer would depend on which narrative side you pick. Jerusalem has been a contested city throughout its history and remains so today. Since it's a common center for all the three Abrahamic faiths, there are competing religious, political, and historical narratives associated with this city. This plot is called as the Temple Mount by the Jews, whereas the Muslims call it Haram al-Sharif, or the Noble Sanctuary. It is here that the three prominent religious sites are located, on which there are a lot of disputes. On the western side of this plot is the Western Wall, also often called as the Wailing Wall, a place that is very sacred for the Jews. On top of this 35-acre plot is the Masjid al-Aqsa, which Muslims revere and have special importance in their faith. Opposite to Masjid al-Aqsa is the Dome of the Rock, an architectural marvel which defines a pleasant skyline for the city of Jerusalem. Let us now dive in and try to understand the significance or salience of each one of these for their respective faiths. The Jews believe that the sacred land is associated with many tales central to its faith. Patriarch Abraham of the Jews was asked by God himself to migrate from Ur in Mesopotamia to the area of Canaan, that is modern-day Israel-Palestine. This story is narrated in the book of Genesis. In this area of Canaan, on a mountain called as Mount Moriah, Abraham performed the near sacrifice of his son Isaac to please God. Pleased by sincerity of Abraham, God is supposed to have communicated with him and promised Abraham that his seeds, that is Abraham's seeds, will be planted on this land. The Jews believe that Mount Moriah is none other than the Temple Mount in East Jerusalem. This story is located somewhere around 1800 BC. Later, King Solomon of the Jews built a temple atop this Mount Moriah somewhere around 960 BC. This temple, called as the first temple, housed the Holy of Holies, or the place where Divine himself lived. It also had the very crucial Ark Covenant, which was a communication from God to Moses. These were tablets on which the instructions to the Jewish community were written. Consequently, this temple became the fulcrum of the Jewish society back then. But as empires rose in the vicinity like tides of the sea, they descended down on the territories of the Jews and in the process destroyed their civilization, including the temple, not once but twice. What now remains of the second temple is just the Western Wall according to Jewish beliefs. The wall that we see today in East Jerusalem, where the Jews pray, that is the Western Wall of the second temple of the Jews. The second temple had been destroyed by the Romans around 70 AD, but the wall had survived, and the Jews are drawn towards this wall like a magnet. They come and pray over here and have very strong faith and belief associated with this wall. Many of them also believe that this is the foundation of the world, and this is where the apocalypse also is going to take place. Many of the right-wing Jews want to rebuild the third temple on the Temple Mount itself. And this often brings the Jews into conflict with Muslims of that area and of course across the Arab and Muslim world also. Let us now try to understand how the Christian faith is also connected with this area in Jerusalem. Christian theology also believes that this place is the center of the world. After all, it was here that many of their ancient prophets preached. Jesus himself was born within the Jewish community. Not far from the Temple Mount, he preached against the corruption and vice that had crept in back in the society. The Jews did not believe him to be a prophet, and this led to a lot of persecution of Jesus and his followers. Not far from the Temple Mount is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. The Christians believe that this is the place where Jesus was crucified and later God resurrected him. After Jesus' death, his followers continued to practice Christianity, but their numbers were not very huge. In the 3rd century AD, Roman Emperor Constantine accepted Christianity and subsequently the faith spread in the Western world. From 4th century onwards, we will see that a lot of pilgrims will come to the Holy Lands for the sake of seeking blessings in this area. Christian rule will be established as Byzantine Empire will control these lands. This now brings us to the third faith, that is Islam, and its reverence for this particular area of the Temple Mount. For Muslims too, this place is extremely crucial as Prophet Muhammad, in the early years of his prophetic mission, used to pray looking towards Jerusalem. Consequently, Muslims consider this as their Qibla-e-Awwal, or the first direction of prayers. Subsequently, by a revelation in the Quran, this direction was shifted towards Kaaba itself in Makkah. Also, the place has special reverence as Prophet had performed an overnight journey to Jerusalem, where he is supposed to have led a prayer with the souls of all the departed prophets. After performing this prayer, he, in a spiritual ascension, reached right up to the heaven and spoke or communicated with God directly. Therefore, this place is of great importance in the Islamic faith too. In the 7th century, with the rise of Islam as a political force, the area of Israel-Palestine came under Muslim control. The caliphs of those times, they built a special mosque to commemorate this event from the life of the Prophet. That mosque is known as the Masjid al-Aqsa, the Mosque of Al-Aqsa. And opposite to that mosque is another shrine known as the Dome of the Rock, or Gumbad-e-Sakhra in Arabic. This Dome of the Rock, with its brilliant golden colored hue, has been built several times over the centuries. And as it stands today, with its pleasing skyline of Jerusalem, it has become the iconic or defining image of this holy city. The problem today has become very complicated over the recent decades as the conflict between Israel and Palestine has gone down the spiral. We will have to understand how these developments took place over the recent decades to understand why this is a Gordian knot today. The genesis of the present crisis can be traced back to the Six-Day War of 1967. Before this war, East Jerusalem and West Bank were under the control of the Jordanians. This war gave a resounding victory to Israel, and it got control over both East Jerusalem and West Bank. Israel treated West Bank as occupied territory, but in case of East Jerusalem, it was merged with West Jerusalem, already in Israel's control, and treated as a sovereign territory. The Arab world, United Nations, and many other countries protested against this, but Israel did not budge. It in fact later even passed a law considering it as its capital. But since the nature of the city was very nuanced and there would be a lot of conflicts, there was a unique arrangement that was created for administering the holy areas. As per this arrangement, the area of the Temple Mount was to be under a Muslim waqf, under the control of Jordanians. Muslims were given the privilege of praying over the Temple Mount in Masjid al-Aqsa and its compound. Other faiths had the right to visit this Temple Mount during designated hours, but not the right to pray over there. They were not allowed to carry holy books, display holy books, and also to audibly perform some blessings. They could only visit the place as regular visitors. This arrangement tried to ensure that there was calm in the city. For a lot of Orthodox Jews, in any case, visiting the Temple Mount was out of question. Their beliefs were that since that place had the Holy of Holies, the inner sanctum of the temple, it was not possible for an Orthodox Jew to tread or walk over those areas. But not all Jews shared this reservation. Many Jews started to visit this particular place. And over the recent years, there have been complaints from the sides of Muslims that the Jews have been performing prayers over there despite the guidelines prohibiting them. In 2000, Ariel Sharon, statesman from Israel, had visited the place with a lot of police protection. And that had led to the second intifada or uprising of the Palestinians. These types of visits and violations of the agreement that was entered into after the 1967 war have led to conflicts in that area. The Jews, on the other hand, have complained that Muslims taunt them when they visit the Temple Mount. Also, they allege that stones and firecrackers have been hurled at them. These types of bitter interactions often lead to greater conflicts in Jerusalem as well as in the larger area. The recent crisis also is being linked to some recent events which led to conflicts in the East Jerusalem. Thus, in this timeless city, the conflict between faith and politics continues to endure. There are groups within the Jews, such as the Temple Mount faithful, who challenge the government's ban on Jews worshipping on the Temple Mount. Many of them declare the aim of building a third temple on the Temple Mount itself, leading to a lot of tensions between Jews and Muslims there. This is a conflict that runs deep, a conflict that can be traced back right up to the cradle of Abrahamic faith. In our next video in this series, we will try to understand the history of Abrahamic faiths and how the history of Jerusalem is intertwined with it. It is high time that the international community comes together and tries to resolve this issue in a manner that is acceptable to both the sides. Israel is adamant on Jerusalem as its capital, whereas Palestinians are resolute to have East Jerusalem as the capital of their future state. Some middle ground needs to be found before it is too late. I'll see you in my next lecture, guys.